This is a clear and present danger right now. Kamala Harris would have had another 3,565,000 votes if not for Jim Crow vote suppression tactics. She would have won the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and the presidency.
How Trump and the GOP fixed the 2026 election. Yes, 2026. Greg, welcome back to the program. So what's up with this?
Oh, boy. Well, if you remember, 3 weeks ago, I gave you a report about how I did an analysis. Remember, my day job is a data economist, and I did some technical studies for the ACLU, the NAACP, and Black Voters Matter. And I went through the numbers of vote suppression. How many votes? You know, we talk about vote suppression. Well, what happened? And I made a very careful calculation. Still working on the newest numbers, but and these are the numbers I have presented and will present in a federal court. Kamala Harris would have had another 3,565,000 votes if not for Jim Crow vote suppression tactics. She would have won the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and the presidency. The reason I'm going back to that is say, well, wait a minute. Things are not getting better. They're getting worse. These vote suppression tactics are being cranked up, and I'm not partisan, but it's by the GOP. And so what do we have to look for in 2026? I know Trump said, you just have to vote once in 2024, and that's it, my beloved Christians, as he put it. But they're not going to do something as dramatic as call off an election. All they do is to crank up the vote suppression. And so let's look at some of the things that bent the last election. Okay. There was in 2023, the year before the election, there was a massive purge, and that's done by states. According to the United States Elections Assistance Commission, in the year before leading up to the 2024 election, there were 4,776,706 voters purged. That's the exact number from the federal government. Almost 5 million voters in a manner that we using methods, for example, this system called the Eric Purge system. I did a name by name analysis for the ACLU, and we found out that that list is 63% wrong. So about 3 million voters right there were wrongly removed, overwhelmingly voters of color. So this year, 2025, is going to be the next move for the Great Purge. And is it going to get worse? Well, let me give you look at the trajectory. In 2021, Georgia purged about 500,000 voters. 198,000 of those voters, and I have their names and addresses, were wrongly purged. Now this year, before this past election, they cranked it up to 875,000 voters. In one state, they removed about 1 in 5 voters. It's just going to get worse. Why? 2 things. Number one is Eagle Eye. If you remember that, Tom.
That was the program that William Rehnquist, when he was in Arizona, rode back in the 60s. He rode that all the way to becoming Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice.
That's right. What they did was they challenged Mexican-American voters in Arizona and
Native Americans
and Indians in other states. Well, it's come back. But now Eagle Eye, it's pronounced Eagle Eye. This is created by Cleta Mitchell, Trump's lawyer, who was part of on those calls to try to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to reverse what happened. And so now she's brought it back. Eagle Eye, it's Eagle AI is how it's spelled, because they're using artificial intelligence to challenge even more voters. And what they are doing is, there was a terrible purge system. As I've said, it's 63% wrong, overwhelmingly racist, but that's not enough for the Trumpsters. They are running campaigns to get the states to adopt Cleta Mitchell's lists, the Eagle AI lists. And here's the other problem. So it's going to be even worse. So if we had 3 million voters wrongly removed before, and in my calculations, I don't assume everyone would vote for Harris. But what we're looking at now with the Eagle AI move is a massive new increase in voters purged, and it will happen this year, which is why we can't go to sleep. And here's the other danger. I told you last time that a group called True the Vote, by August, 3 months before the election, had already challenged. This is, again, this is something we've talked about on the air here. An individual group of vigilantes, self-proclaimed vote fraud hunters. For the first time since 1946, we've had individual non-governmental people challenging voters. 3 months before the election, they had challenged 317,886 voters. That's a third of a million voters, including, as I've mentioned before, Major Gamaliel Turner, who was all these black soldiers, 4,000 soldiers, mostly were soldiers out of Fort Benning area, were challenged by the chairman of the Republican Party and lost their votes. But now it's going to get worse because Cleta Mitchell is joining with True the Vote to include her new organization, which will be challenging voters in Pennsylvania, Georgia. And there's about 24 states that still have these Jim Crow laws on the books where you can challenge voters. And on top of it, here's the other thing I'm very, very worried about, is that we can expect a challenge to that the GOP is prepared to pass this, what's called the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act would require any new voter or any re-registering voters, and by the way, 31 million people a year re-register, you're going to have to prove your citizenship. Prove your citizenship. Because they want to get rid of all those alien voters on the voter rolls, Tom.
Both of them.
Well, both of them. Well, actually, as I point out in the article, the state of Florida was about to remove 179,000 voters based on a federal list of people who'd been deported. And they said, oh, they're still voting on our rolls because they found a lot of guys named Jose Garcia. And guess what? Jose Garcia was deported. So they remove all the Jose Garcias. Now, here's the problem. Of the 179,000, when it was finally challenged, the state of Florida found one voter, an Austrian Republican. That was the only voter out of 179,000. However, thousands and thousands of Florida voters, almost Hispanics, never got their votes back because they were required to go into court to get their votes. You got to take off a day and prove to a judge that you are who you are, that you're an American citizen, but your last name is Garcia. Now, here's the other problem. The state of Georgia and many other states have now asked Kristi Noem to release the SAVE list, that bogus list that caused 179,000 Florida voters at risk, thousands who lost their vote, to use that, release that same list to other secretaries of state in Georgia and other states. So they want to use that same bogus, corroded, dead wrong list to remove voters. And it's going to be, because of the way the list is constructed, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters, a lot of black voters, because of the commonality of minority names.
Yeah.
So this is brand new that's coming in. And so even if they don't get the SAVE law passed, they can still use the SAVE database because it's under the control of Kristi Noem, who's the new head of Homeland Security, which makes me feel very insecure.
Yeah.
There's other problems. I won't give you every single item on the list, but understand this is a clear and present danger right now.
So we're speaking with Greg Palast, the famous investigative reporter whose op-ed appears today at hartmannreport.com under our daily take. And Greg, we have about 2.5 minutes here before we hit a hard break.
Okay.
What can Americans do? What do you do if you find that you've been purged from the voting rolls? Do you even know, by the way, before you show up to vote? Or does that vary from state to state?
Oh, it varies from state to state. Well, you're supposed to get a postcard. But big deal, according to the way the state of Georgia sends out these postcards, and they'll send them to the wrong addresses, the return rate, they look like junk mail. And so students, especially people who are renters, they don't see it, they don't return. The return rate is 1.2%, about a little bit better than 1 out of 100 cards returned.
They know that if they send 100,000 postcards into a black neighborhood, they're going to be able to knock 99,000 black voters off the rolls.
And in fact, what's more dangerous, that's the state sending out the postcard. That's dangerous enough. But now that you have this vigilante voter system, again, It was test driven in Georgia in 2020. Yeah. It was rolled out in 2024.
Greg, why don't Democrats do this?
Because I've talked to Democratic
leaders. The Republicans would raise
so
absolute holy hell, and that might start the process of fixing this problem.
The black leadership has told me, Reverend Jesse Jackson and others have told me, we have suffered this. No matter what, we would never impose it on someone else. What they want to do is inform the public.
But it's legal.
Stop this business.
It's completely legal.
Yes. Well, what I'm very worried about on top of it is this personal challenges from True the Vote,
which
and
is also
the Eagle
legal.
AI organization.
I'm saying, like if the NFL changed the rules and said teams can have 3 additional players and half the team said, that's just wrong. We're not going to do that. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Well, I got to tell you, Tommy, you're going to have to convince black leadership that they should use Ku Klux Klan tactics. You have to understand that the last time these personal challenges, which Eagle AI is doing, True Trump Front organization, the last time it was used was 1946 by the Ku Klux Klan. That's when my film's called Vigilantes, Inc. Because
I get it.
The Klan, called themselves incorporated as Vigilantes, Inc. So
but the Supreme Court has legalized it. I just don't understand.
I know.
First of all, I don't understand why Democrats aren't screaming about it. Certainly Republicans would if the tables were turned. And secondly, I don't understand why Democrats are not doing it, if for no other reason than pure political performance art.
Well, we've had Democrats like Stacey Abrams, who took, one of her complaints about the 2018 election when we looked at those massive wrong purges. That was the thing that she cited our reports.
Right.
Again, done for the NAACP and ACLU. These massive, we're talking, like I said, I have the names of 198,000 voters wrongly removed.